More importantly, where is the respect for human dignity?
Ride Along Live.
So I was heading to the town of Grenville from the direction of Canal Road and noticed that there was a crowd gathering on the opposite side of the street from where I was walking. And so, I crossed over to find out what was happening because I heard someone in the crowd saying, "Hey, he collapsed. The man just collapsed." So I got there and noticed everyone was standing around this gentleman. His body is lying motionless right next to a ditch. And no one was really doing anything to help him. So I asked, I'm a nurse by training. This is like, I'm 23 years in the profession. I've been out of Grenada as a nurse, but I've been working as a nurse abroad for the last 17 years. Anyhow, I asked immediately based on, CPR training, did anyone witness this gentleman's collapse? And has anyone called 911? And did anyone start CPR? And obviously, nothing was happening. So I immediately went in, started CPR, and was directing the people around me, can someone please call 911? And if anyone has not contacted the police station, Grenville's police station, that is, which is like maybe 2 minutes walk from where the incident was unfolding, please, can someone walk to the police station? I need a uniformed officer on the scene just to control the scene and for safety of everyone involved. Because as you can see from that video, which unfortunately got posted, vehicles were zooming past in every direction. And again, we can speak to the disregard that is shown by some drivers on the road, right? And so a crowd is gathering. Vehicles are zooming past in each direction. And I started CPR on this gentleman the best way I could because he's lying on the cold, hard pavement. His left arm is hanging off into the ditch. I did CPR for about 2 minutes, asked someone to check a pulse. I'm not sure if he knew what he was doing. So I reached up, check a pulse. And by then I observed the gentleman's face and realized his gaze basically was fixed, like his eyes were fixed in the socket. There was foam at his mouth. No response. So then I took my own phone out and called 911. And the dispatcher on the other end said to me, "Well, ma'am, we already called. The ambulance is coming from the hospital." And so then I said, "Okay, I understand that the ambulance is coming, but is there any way that you can put a call to the police station to have a uniformed officer on the scene?" And I can tell you the arrogance in his tone, the way he started talking down, telling me, "Well, that's not our jurisdiction. We don't deal with the police," which again is another topic of discussion. I found that rather surprising because if a 911 call is put out, my assumption is that the police at least would be alerted to an incident unfolding, given that it was in such proximity to that police station. Anyway, I ended the call because I realized he couldn't do anything. Suffice it to say, the crowd kept coming, people kept coming, gawking, making their own medical diagnoses. I don't know how they arrived at that. Anyway, I took an umbrella off of a woman. So you might notice the gentleman was covered with 2 umbrellas. I said, okay, we need to cover this gentleman just to protect his privacy. So I took the first umbrella from the other lady, from one woman. I covered his head. And then another lady offered up an umbrella, which was black in color. So by that point, he was covered with 2 umbrellas. To back up a little bit, that call I made to 911 was around 1:28 or 13:28 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
I covered the gentleman with the 2 umbrellas. And again, no one was coming. At one point, a woman in the crowd tapped me on the shoulder and said she was a police officer. But she was in plain clothes and did not present any ID. So I really cannot confirm her identity as to who she was or what she does. Anyway, I called out, there's a tailor shop across the street. And I said, look, anybody, if you can spare a bed sheet or a curtain, anything that you're willing to part with, I need to cover this gentleman. Because by then it was just getting to the point where people were pulling out their cell phones. Right? Mm-hmm. And so someone came from the shop, handed me whatever, if you might see other videos of this gentleman's body being covered. I have already seen 2, which I find is very disgusting. Two videos already posted online of a man lying dead on the street. And people in the crowd were saying to me, "Well, miss, you can't do that. The police haven't been here yet." I said, "You know what we're going to do? We are not moving his body, but I will cover him." So I got that material from the tailor shop. I covered the gentleman up to his neck, and then he was wearing a ball cap. So I adjusted it so that the peak of the cap was mostly covering his face. Eventually, I would say almost simultaneously, a uniformed police officer arrived. there was a doctor on the scene, and then I could hear the sound of an approaching ambulance, like the sirens, approaching. Anyhow, the doctor came, was able to listen to his chest, pronounced him dead. I believe it was just about 134-ish, 135. And then the ambulance arrived. I think there was a nursing assistant based on the color of her uniform and the ambulance driver. Another thing I found very, very disappointing in that moment is that after the doctor listened to the man's chest and pronounced him dead on the scene, she came out, and I am assuming, at least from medical training, from CPR training, that if you're going to show up, if you are called to an emergency and you came in an ambulance, I'm assuming you're prepared to at least document something. She took out, and I kid you not, a torn piece of paper from a glove box. And she documented, she said, oh, the body is lifeless. What time he pronounced him dead? 1:34. And she wrote it on that piece of paper. I didn't say anything. And then I asked her, I said, ma'am, I just did CPR on this gentleman and I was not wearing any gloves. Do you have any hand sanitizer? Can I have? So she said, yes, they have hand sanitizer. She got me some hand sanitizer, which was at the driver's side of the ambulance. She was flipping that bottle of sanitizer like, I have ketchup and the ketchup is just about finished. And I'm trying to get the last bit of ketchup out of that bottle. It wasn't quarter full. It wasn't 3/4 full. It was more or less empty. And there was no reserve hand sanitizer. I mean, hand sanitizer in an ambulance. You have no forms, not even a basic notebook to document what you found when you arrived on the scene, And so anyway, that was the end of it. I spoke to the police officer. I said, is there anything that you need from me? Do you need a statement? He said, no. So I left the scene because I went, I had business at the bank, which I never even got around to doing because the lineup was rather long. And I was so frustrated by that point that I don't think I would have made any sense or be coherent in the bank. So I left. Anyhow, I did return to the scene, and I'm glad I did because obviously the gentleman was still lying there. There was a much bigger crowd at that point, and I could tell you the cell phones were out. Anyway, one of the guys who were at the scene initially, he said to me, ma'am, I'm glad you came back. The police officer was looking for you for a statement. So I was able to give a statement, a rather brief statement, and then I actually left the scene altogether. I went to the police station just to inquire, I said, who receives the call whenever someone places a call to 911? And he said, oh, that goes to police headquarters. So then I said to him, okay, so if they're responsible then for dispatching the ambulance, how difficult it is for them as police headquarters. I mean, we're not a big country, right? How difficult is it for them to make a quick call to the nearest police station, knowing that the ambulance is coming all the way from Maribor, most likely, right, to the town of Grenville. I don't know if that takes 10 minutes. I don't know if it takes 15 minutes, but however long it takes, somebody needs to be there to secure the scene. And I would think the role of a first responder is not just limited to the person or people in the ambulance at that moment, but as a police officer, for example, you should know how to render CPR. You have the authority to secure the scene. You have the authority to control traffic and keep the crowd at bay. None of that happened, because even as that officer showed up in uniform, it just felt like that was just something more to keep the crowds coming. And one of the things that really stood out to me, Junior, and I was so upset by it. And I know, people, my people, our people, they have this thing that they say to us, oh, all you come from away, and when all you come here, all you want to play thing, and all you think Grenada is this and Grenada is that. And I'm like, I'm not about that. I understand what Grenada is. I know how things are. But if progress means everybody in attendance has a cell phone, why can it not mean everybody in attendance, or at least one or two people in the crowd, have some knowledge of how to do simple, basic chest compressions? Simple, basic chest compressions. And more importantly, where is the respect for human dignity? That a man is lying dead on the scene. At one point, a woman showed up hysterical. She identified herself as the mother of one of his children. And then another young lady who was behind her identified herself as his niece. So his girlfriend, for want of a better term, and his niece arrived at the scene, hysterical, inconsolable. And people are filming. I am glad I covered that man's body the best I could, because he would have been exposed for at least 3 hours, however long he was there. And everybody just had their phone out, and no one was stepping forward to say, maybe I can do this, maybe I can help. And they thought, let me use my phone, let me film this, let me call everybody, because I could tell you, walking down from the scene, I saw people walking towards the scene. They knew who the man was by name. And they started talking, and then people kept on coming and coming. And I just think, I get it, it's human nature, we're curious. But in that moment, let's remember that this gentleman has a family out there.